So when you're playing on a worship team, you will be playing with other instrumentalists, other vocalists. And the main thing that you need to know for playing with other people is listen. Actually, two things. Number one, listen. Number two, less is more. So number one, listen. You are not the only instrumentalist on your worship team, most likely. You are not the only vocalist on your worship team. If you're playing keys, you might not even be singing on your worship team. So listen to what other people are doing, because it's not about you. It's not about playing all the cool things you can play. It's about worshiping the Lord, everyone together. But also a part of that is you making room for other people. And so that goes into our second point that I wanted to discuss, is less is more. When you're playing by yourself, like we've been for the entirety of this course, we've talked about how you add things to make it sound full. But when you add even one more instrument, if both of you are playing at your max, like if I'm going all out, playing all the rhythmic patterns and everything, and that person is too, that can easily become way too much and just way too distracting. And it sounds like each of us is thinking we're a soloist, and we're not. So we fit together. So let's say you are playing with the guitarist. Let's just keep it simple for now. You and the guitarist are playing together. What you should be doing is actually listening more to the guitarist than you're listening to yourself. Now that takes skill, that takes practice. It happens over time, the more you practice with them. But you're listening to them to see what they're doing. And let's just say it's you and a guitarist. There will be times where there will be parts of the song that you will take. And so you will kind of take the lead on those parts of the song and play out more. And then there are parts of the song where they will take the lead and play out those parts of the song more. And then you can drop back. Dropping back looks like dynamically playing quieter, playing less busy accompaniment patterns, maybe just playing something simpler, something more simply. So less is more. The more musicians you have together, the less each person has to play. And that just makes sense. So if you have a pianist and you have a guitarist, and then you have a bass player, and then you have an electric guitarist, and then you have a drummer, and then you have a singer, and then you have another singer, and then you have another singer, each person needs to play much less than they normally would. So in some ways, playing on a worship team is actually easier than what we've been doing right now. I think you may find that your first few times on the worship team, after taking this course and after everything we've done together, you might find, whoa, this is actually easier from a technical standpoint than I thought it would be, because you actually don't have to play as much. You can, for example, you might just be holding chords. 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there might be enough going on with the drummer and the guitarist and everybody else that you maybe don't need to play nearly as much. And so that's where you listen. So listen to what are the other people doing and how does everyone sound together. Also, when you're on a worship team, you're not just hearing the Holy Spirit, everyone is. And everyone is also submitting to the worship leader. And so the worship leader is telling you where to go. So the worship leader might tell you, play more here, or bring it down here, or something like that. So listen, less is more, and don't overplay. Those are the main things to think about when you're playing with other instrumentalists. Another consideration is you can also use other registers that aren't used by the vocalists or instrumentalists. Now, don't overdo this, but I just want to throw this out there as a consideration for you. So you have basically your singers are going to be singing in this middle range, someplace in here. Your guitarist is going to be in the middle range. Your bass player is going to be down here. And so what can happen is you can actually have kind of a sound overload when you have so many people in the same register. So one thing that works well sometimes, again, not every time, but perhaps in bigger songs, when you've got a lot of people doing things in this register, one thing that works well is for you to actually do some higher parts up here. Okay, so let's say we just got done in our previous lesson with the bridge of Thank You, Jesus, for the blood. So let's say we're doing that part because that's a pretty big section. I'm going to put that on the screen for you here. So let's say we're doing that and everybody's, I mean, you can hear the drummer just going at it, the guitarist, the bass guitarist, or the bass player, the vocalists, they're all kind of in this range here, right? And so one thing that might work well for you to do, especially in this big section of the song, so that your instrument comes through a little bit, is to actually play in the higher register. So like play something up here. Something stronger than the wonder-working power of the blood. And that higher register will come through really well because it's not, the sound space isn't being taken up by the other instrumentalists and vocalists. And that's also where this is kind of an advanced topic. We'll get into this in some other courses. But you could even use some octaves here. So you could even do kind of like the melody up here in octaves. So maybe for this song, I would do "There's nothing stronger than the wonder-working power of the blood. Sons and daughters, we are ransomed by our Father through the blood. So you could do something like that, kind of those octaves help to bring that part out a little bit. So that gives you an idea of something you can experiment with. Okay, so we talked about that. Now let's discuss playing with auxiliary keys. So if you just get on a worship team and maybe you're the new person, what they might actually have you do is start by playing auxiliary keys. Or maybe you're just the permanent auxiliary keys player, and that's totally fine. Auxiliary keys is basically a second keyboard that is kind of, a second keyboard. In some of the more traditional churches, they'll call it second piano or whatever. And so this second keyboard or this auxiliary keyboard is basically playing pads and supporting what the rest of the band is doing. So on this auxiliary keyboard, you might not be playing the typical piano sound, you might be playing a pad. So on my keyboard, for example, I have a string pad right here. That's a very loud, intense string pad right there, but we can go with it for now. So maybe underneath this portion, there is nothing stronger. Maybe you would be playing stronger than the wonder-working power of the blood. That actually works pretty well, and that might actually be a sound that they might use in that song. So the main thing that you'll want to consider when you're playing auxiliary keys is you're typically playing a pad, whether it's an intense string pad like this or a softer pad, which I have some of those as well, and I can show you those later. But what you're going to want to do is you're not going to be doing all the fancy things that we've done in the course. Notice how there's kind of an odd pulsating feel to that. It just doesn't sound very good with the pad. What you're going to do with the pad is basically play chords, just play the downbeats. That's going to sound really good underneath everything else they're doing. So there's nothing stronger than the wonder-working power of the blood. It calls us sons and daughters. We are ransomed by our Father through the blood. That's going to provide a nice, solid foundation for you there. Let me change to a different pad so I can show you a couple more things. So there's on my Yamaha, I set up I don't remember if I set up this pad or if it's if it was preset in there, but I call it a worship pad. Okay. So I think you can hear that. I have some noise suppression on my microphone, but I think you can still hear that in the background. Okay, so this is the kind of pad that I usually like. And so sometimes I'll have this on underneath my main key sound. Just adds a nice little warmth underneath it. Okay, so if you're playing auxiliary keys, you might be playing something like that little hum, that kind of warm pad. One thing that works well is to use chords with an open voicing for that. Now, again, this is kind of a little advanced topic, and so I'm just giving you some ideas that you can use and experiment with. You don't have to use all of these ideas, but these are just a few options. So one thing to do is use open voicings. So basically, instead of like playing a full chord in the right hand, let me change to a different camera here. Okay, instead of playing a full chord in the right hand, you might split your notes a little bit so that this is called a close voicing. All your notes are really close or closed, close typically, close voicing. But an open voicing tends to have more space between your notes. So, like for example, this A chord, you could play those notes in a little different order. So basically you could play like A, E, and then C sharp, A. And so open voicings with your notes a little bit further apart tend to sound a little better when you are playing pads like this. So then maybe if I go to a D chord, I could do something like that. That sounds good. E, I could do like this. And something like that is going to be really supportive underneath what the main keys player is playing. Okay, so I wanted to discuss auxiliary keys. Also, what I talked about with open voicings, I know that's kind of a new concept. We haven't really talked about it much. To get a feel for what open voicings are like, play from a hymnal. Just go find a hymnal, and you'll see in the left hand, you're not playing notes really close together. You're playing notes further apart. The right hand notes are somewhat closer together. Something like this tends to be a good voicing. In a hymnal, we typically don't see this. We typically see like two notes in the left hand, two notes in the right hand. Okay, so that's just a little introduction to that. I hope you enjoyed this video. The clip that you just watched is from my course called Intermediate Worship Piano. If you would like to learn more about how to play worship piano from a heart of worship and love for Jesus, check out my online lessons and courses at adorationmusicacademy.com.